our special segment on Thursdays. I call it Travel Thursday. This is something that emerged in the pandemic, where I was hoping to help you dream a little about the places that you could go to once the lockdowns ended, and then it just continued. And today, I'd like to talk to somebody who wants to tell you about a place in Europe, and this is very interesting. I'm joined today by Preethi Parthasarathy, who is globetrotter, travel expert, content creator, founder of Peppy Travel Girl. Preethi, thanks so much for joining me today. And you've selected Canary Islands. What can you tell me about it and why you selected it?
Hi, Alex. Thanks so much for having me. It's really nice to be talking about this with you. So the Canary Islands are pretty special for me. I feel like a lot of my trips have been to Europe in the past, but honestly, when I think about the Canary Islands, there's really nothing like it. It is one of the most unbelievable landscapes, and you can't even believe that you're actually in a continent like Europe when you're over there. So that's why I wanted to talk about it, because it's not as visited as, other places in Europe, but I feel like it really should be on people's bucket lists.
Okay, where is it situated for those that don't know and can't pull out the map quickly enough? And how do you get there?
So the islands are off the coast of Spain. They technically belong to Spain, but if you look at a map, they're actually closer to Morocco, which is actually pretty interesting. But it's pretty easy to get over there. Flights directly to Spain. The easiest way to get there would be through Madrid, but also direct flights do fly in from Germany, to Lanzarote and Gran Canaria. So it's just about an hour and a half from major cities in Europe, and flights are actually pretty cheap. It's not more than 2,000 rupees one way.
2,000
so it's pretty
rupees?
easy to get to. One way, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so that sounds incredible already. Is it a very large place?
So there are 7 islands. There's Tenerife, Fuerteventura, Gran Canaria, Lanzarote, La Palma, La Gomera, and El Hierro. I've been to Lanzarote and Gran Canaria, and these are not really big in that sense. Like, each island is pretty small and it takes about 3-4 days to cover each of them. But they are pretty spread out. So if you want to cover all of the Canary Islands, that would take time. But a good way to incorporate it in maybe a Europe trip or your trip to Spain is to maybe, dedicate maybe 4 to 5 days in general to the islands that you want to visit.
Is that where the song is from, the Tenerife Sea? I'm not sure. But anyway, so the point is, and you've rattled those off. You clearly know your stuff. So you've told me how to get there. You've told me how much it costs. It's not very expensive to get there from the mainland. And so that's not your primary expense. Is it expensive to stay there?
Honestly, I feel like if you're traveling to Europe, then you already have that cost in your budget, because Europe is an expensive continent. Spain is an expensive country. But surprisingly, the Canary Islands are slightly cheaper. So if I had to think about food, you're actually spending maybe 30 euros a meal compared to 50 euros in Spain, like mainland Spain. And when it comes to accommodation and stuff, again, there's like categories all across. We have really cheap hostels, there are really expensive all-inclusive resorts, and then there are apartments in between for maybe 30, 40 euros a night. So honestly, it can be a pretty easy on your wallet trip with a fantastic experience. So the ROI over there is actually really great.
Okay, so if you are, and as I understand it, you call yourself if I'm not mistaken, the medium budget bestie, is that right? And so explain that to me. You're saying that you can give advice to people who are looking for the best of both worlds, is that right?
That is right, yes.
Okay,
I understand that, I understand that when people are traveling, they want to spend as less as possible, but have the best experience. And that's also kind of why I picked the Canary Islands, because like going there is definitely going to blow your mind.
Okay, so from the accommodation standpoint then, in order to get that, what is the best advice here? Would you say staying in an apartment is better, or are there great options when you're looking for hotels?
I think if you're traveling with friends or, as a couple, then I feel like an apartment would be a really good idea. But if you're traveling as a family with kids, and the Canary Islands are very family friendly, then an all-inclusive resort is actually a pretty decent deal, because there's something happening all day long with minimal effort on your part. So there's something for everybody. And I feel like these are the best options.
Okay, so a couple of questions in terms of when you should go, right? So what's the best place to visit these islands, and how much time should you be willing to spend?
So the Canary Islands are actually a year-round destination. Like, there's sunshine throughout. And if you really want to avoid the boiling hot months, then skip summer. I would suggest maybe spring or autumn, which is when it's cool, but it's also warm during the day. The temperatures are great to take a dip in the waters. So I recommend spring or autumn to go. Um, Otherwise, it's actually a year-round destination. You really don't have to worry about when you're getting leave or when peak season hits because it's actually a really good time all year round.
And how long does it take? Oh, not really to see everything. Obviously, you can't. But I'm saying, how long should you be willing to spend to really do it justice?
I think each island would need at least 3-4 days for one to be able to comfortably see all of it. And while I understand it may not be possible to fit all 7 islands in one trip, I would recommend picking at least 2.
And which would those be?
All of them are different.
Which would those be?
I did Lanzarote and Gran Canaria, and both were extremely different in terms of what they had to offer. So I would highly recommend both. There's also Fuerteventura for people who are into kite surfing or water sports. So, like, if time permits, then maybe add that as well.
What are the must-do activities in those places that you mentioned?
So what sets the Canary Islands apart is that they're all the result of volcanic eruptions that happened millions of years ago. So the entire island is made of volcanic rock and soil. And that is how the ecosystem of there is also built. So when I talk about Lanzarote, it is the landscapes that really, really blow my mind because you see mountains and volcanoes all across and everything is volcanic. You can go into a volcanic tube and experience the magma drips just like still in time. You can see the result of shell volcanoes empty, like those who are completely exhausted. It's just very, very different in terms of landscapes. There's a green lake that a sunken volcano has kind of birthed. There's a very pink salt lake. So it's actually really different in terms of landscape and every day will show you something different. So in Lanzarote, that's what really stands out. And in Gran Canaria, there are some amazing hiking trails with some very interesting Aboriginal history about their rituals. So that is something like for nature lovers, I would actually recommend with a little bit of culture thrown in. And the Canary Islands are actually really famous for wine. So in Lanzarote, if you've seen, I don't know if you've seen pictures, but these landscapes where the volcanic soil is just completely black. And then there are these holes that are made with little rock walls around them. That's where the grapevines are planted. So these are wines that are actually made in volcanic soil. And those walls protect them from the winds coming in from the Azores. And they produce amazing Malvasian wine. So like these are things that really stand out in these 2 islands for me. And yeah, I think that's what I would absolutely recommend to someone.
Okay, so, and you've painted a beautiful picture. I want to talk about budget though. And obviously you need the Schengen visa, right?
Yes, yeah.
So because you're going to Europe. But so you're talking about €30 per meal per person. And doing quick conversion, it's about 2,700 rupees. And I know that there's a tendency to convert everything when you go there, but how much should you be willing to spend?
I think if I have to include flights from India plus internal transfers, like, to the Canary Islands and back, plus accommodation, meals, activities, and I'm assuming one would want to pick up, trinkets and souvenirs. I think it could easily be roughly 1.5 to 2 lakhs, something per person, for maybe a 7-day trip to the Canaries. Yeah.
Okay. So when you go to Europe, of course, the desire is to see a lot more than just one place. And
yeah,
obviously you're going to land in Spain. And so you might want to add a couple of locations to what you're doing, right? So if you're saying 7 days in the Canary Islands, and if you're saying that you hit Madrid first, would you suggest a few more places that you can visit in Spain?
Absolutely. I think Madrid is one of my favorite cities in Spain. So definitely a few days over there. Barcelona has some very interesting memories, and Valencia was one of my favorites. So if you add maybe, another week, you're able to cover 2 or 3 cities at max. Sevilla, probably. I could go on. Spain really needs like 3 weeks on its own. But if you want to combine it into a 2-week trip, then another couple of cities in Spain would actually round it off really nicely.
So let me end this on a very, what I think is the most interesting note, which is the food, right? And you said that there are so many options, but give me a sense. What is your favorite, what are your favorite 2 or 3 things to eat there?
So every meal starts, like even before you order, they come and place a basket of bread and a couple of sauces on the table. These sauces are called mojos. And there is one called the mojo rojo, which is made of chili. And it is delightful. I feel like I could have filled up on just the mojo rojo and I brought so much back. So that is a very typically Canarian sauce. It's very different from what you get in mainland Spain. So definitely that. There are also a lot of very different cheeses that are made over there. So some of those, there's a soft cheese that's made with a flour And that was a very interesting cheese that I brought back and everybody loved. So there was that. Plus, as a vegetarian, I mean, I don't eat meat. So I found that beans and potatoes are like pretty present in most dishes. So it wasn't very difficult for me to navigate as a non-meat eater in Spain either. So food is actually not a problem. It's actually delightful. Plus, wash it down with a glass of Malvasian wine. I think that just rounds it off.
That sounds incredible. And obviously, I would think that the seafood and all of that is going to be known for it because it's an island, right? So, Preethi, thanks so much for joining me today. And you've got me thinking of about adding this to my bucket list.
Oh, you absolutely must. You will not regret it. Thanks so much for having me, Alex.
All right.